Mr. Henry Thompson was a successful banker, known for his meticulous work and dedication to his clients. It wasn't uncommon for clients to walk into the bank and seek him out, as he had a knack for making people smile with his witty humour and charming smile. One evening, when he was working late in the office, Henry heard a faint whisper. "Henry. The money is cursed," it said. He looked around, but the office was empty. He was certain that the last teller had left after waving to him an hour earlier. He tried to ignore it, but the voice persisted, growing louder night after night. Henry noted that all day he would be his normal, charming self, and almost forget about the voice that whispered only after dark when he was alone. Henry began to feel a cold presence in the bank, especially in the vault. The whispers continued, suggesting that the money held dark secrets. "You cannot escape its curse," they taunted. This made Henry very uneasy, but he decided against sharing this experience with anyone, partly because he didn't want anyone to think he was losing his mind, and partly out of sheer curiosity. Henry was obsessed with his work, spending hours balancing accounts and inspecting transactions. He had earned his senior position at the bank from doing just that. He never faltered when it came to balancing accounts. But then he started seeing ghostly figures in the bank, their faces twisted and troubled with unrest. The whispers grew louder, haunting him as he did his very best to stick to his routine and uphold his impeccable reputation. Years ago, Henry had made a financial decision that had led to a client's ruin. He had missed a key factor in a decision-making process that determined whether the bank could meet the minimum threshold to lend the man money. The man had been a loyal customer for many years and had fallen on hard times. He needed a loan to keep his business afloat until seasonal sales picked up once again. But Henry had accidentally left out one key factor which would have resulted in an approval for funds, leading to a decline from the bank for the loan. The man was absolutely devastated and even became emotional in his seat after hearing the news. He had been a long-standing pillar of the community and was facing default and closure without enough money to make it through the season. The memory of that mistake had always haunted Henry, but now it seemed to blend with his current fears, making him question his ethics and his sanity. He never divulged his mistake to anyone and had kept it to himself all these years. He feared it was coming back to haunt him. Desperate, Henry confided in his colleagues and even talked to a financial advisor who had been a colleague for almost as long as he had been at the bank. His friends reassured him that he was a gem and that everyone makes mistakes. They reminded him of all the good things he had done for others to reassure him that he was not evil. But no one took him seriously about the voices and the figures. They suggested he was just stressed and needed a break. His family worried about his state of mind, urging him to take some time off, and assured him that he could balance the accounts earlier in the morning after getting some rest. But this was not acceptable to Henry. He had to keep to his routine. The whispers became more insistent after he discussed them with colleagues. It was almost as if they overheard his conversations and confessions. "You cannot escape your guilt," they cried. Henry started seeing the ghostly figures more frequently, their spectral forms following him about, even in the day when the bank was busy, but no one seemed to detect or recognize their presence. The cold presence became unbearable to Henry, chilling him to the bone. His performance at work began to suffer. He lost his cheery demeanor, often looking away and pretending to be deep in his work when happy customers waltzed in. He became paranoid and jumpy, yet did his best to hide his paranoia, as he knew no one believed him about the voices. He couldn't tell what was real and what was a figment of his tortured mind. For the first time, he began doubting his own sanity, wondering if he was truly losing his grip on reality. One night as he was alone in the bank, the whispers became a roar. "Join us, Henry," they demanded. He saw the ghost of the client he had ruined, his face twisted in pain and defeat, the same look he wore on his face all those years ago after receiving the news that his loan application had been denied. Henry screamed aloud, but no one even turned to look. It was as if he himself were a ghost. No one seemed to recognize his struggle. Henry suddenly stood up and ran out of the bank, desperate to escape the voice and the ghosts. On the way out, he ran past patrons who tried to greet him without even as much as a nod. He hopped into his van and drove recklessly down the highway, bursting into fits of wailing and tears. He locked himself in his laundry room and slumped down in a chair, covering his face and begging for it to stop. The voices had followed all the way home. He thought he had escaped, but there was nowhere else to turn. He was in the laundry room alone, and the voices and figures were all within arm's reach of him, screaming and gnashing their crooked teeth as they billowed about the confined space. Henry was terrified. They seemed to have multiplied by 10, and the sound echoed louder as they wailed, "You cannot escape your guilt, Henry. You will soon join us in doom." Henry crouched down onto the floor and covered his face out of sheer fear and shame. He sobbed as the sound of the voices teemed as a chorus. This went on for what seemed like an eternity until they faded in only seconds, filing out of the laundry room right through the closed door. This would have left anyone in emotional tatters, but Henry was just relieved that his eardrums were no longer booming. Instead, he suffered ringing in the ears for a few hours and found himself waking up in a panic and discovering it was dark outside. How long had he been passed out? It was 9 p.m. when Henry awoke, and for once he absolutely refused to go back to the bank that night. The accounts could wait for the daylight of morning. And you, dear friend, have you ever heard whispers among the chaos and noise of a busy office? Have you ever felt a cold presence that chills you to the bone, while others go on about their business undeterred? Well, you're not alone in your fear. Don't let your guard down and stay vigilant. Find others who you can confide in, and for God's sake, get home before dark. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and follow us for more. Join us on TikTok and YouTube for more Chilling Chronicles, if you dare.